All right, CNT120, Chapter 3 Lab. We are now moving on to network layer, or IPv4 addressing, and we're going to set static IPv4 addressing. We're actually going to set a static IPv4 address on our Windows PC, and then the same thing on our Linux VM, and we're actually going to ping between them to check for connectivity, and then we will set these back to dynamic. So first off, I'm just going to minimize my virtual machine here, just to declutter my screen, and I'm going to set my static IP on my Windows PC here. We're going to go to our network connections, so I can right click on the Windows icon, go to network connections, in here select network and sharing and work our way in. The other way I can go, and I'm just going to show you this right off the bat, if I right click on my network icon down here, open network and internet settings, I end up basically going the same way. Network and sharing center, indoor Ethernet 3, etc. So either one of those is fine. I'm going to click properties here. This brings up the properties of my network card, my Intel Ethernet connection. We are going to highlight IP version 4, TCP IP version 4. Click properties, and right now it's set for obtain IP address automatically. It's getting an IP from a DHCP server on the network. We are going to set static. We are going to use the following. We're going to set a static IP. We do this a lot in our lab rooms for labs that we do in the CNT program, but this is also handy for things like servers and other devices on our network like printers that we want them to be statically assigned, that we can always find them. So this is not uncommon. It's not super common for desktops, but it's not uncommon to need to set a static IP on something in my network. So we're going to use the following. We're going to click in here and we're going to follow this scheme here. We're going to use 192.168.10 dot. Now, this first part here is the network. All of our machines will have this same beginning, 192.168.10. So we all belong to the same street, if you will. This last octet here, we need to make sure it's individual. We need to make sure all of our PCs have their own number. Otherwise, on our street, everybody has the same house number, and that doesn't work. So we want to make sure this is individual. And when we do that, we typically use our PC number. So if you look at your CPU, you'll see a sticker on there, system like Haltech or HT101, that's Haltech 101. And below that, you'll see CNT and a number. That's your computer number, CNT05, CNT12, CNT13. We're going to use that number that's there. I happen to be sitting in front of a computer too, so I'm going to plug in .2. That makes sure that all the IP addresses in the room do not conflict. There's no duplicates. When we click on the subnet mask field, it fills in the 255.255.255.0. That's right. We are using a Class C network here, if you will. It identified that and filled that in for us. We are not using a router and actually trying to get to the internet, so we're going to leave the default gateway blank. And we're going to say OK. We're going to say close. We're going to say close. And we're going to apply that. Now, just for simplicity, I'm going to close these windows out just to make my screen a little cleaner for you to see. I'm going to open up a command prompt, and I'm going to do an IP config here. I want to see that my IP address has been set, and it is. Mr. Brown comes from the days of Windows 95, when you would set an IP address, you actually literally had to reboot the PC for it to apply. So after I did that, I always double check my number, and I still do it now because we make typos. You're going to make a typo. I make typos. It happens. This is a way to double check that. 192.168.10.2. My subnet mask looks good. Excellent. What I'm going to do now while I'm here is I'm actually going to ping my loopback. And this is verifying that TCP IP is installed and my NIC and everything is functioning. So this is kind of a double check, kind of reaching around, reaching out my front door and ringing my own doorbell. Does it work? That's what we're doing. All right. I'm going to pause this for a second because I want to go over and do the same process on my VM. So I'm just going to minimize my command prompt here. I'm going to bring my virtual machine back up. If by chance it went to sleep, you might need to plug in the password CNT class to get back in. Over here, I'm going to minimize my text file. I'm going to close my terminal prompt for now. And I'm going to set the IP settings on my Linux machine. I can go here to menu, preferences, and down here to network. I can go that way to get to it. Or I can also go, and I'm going to close that, I can click on my network icon down here, that's this guy right there, and click network settings, and it brings me to the same window. So either one is fine. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn the NIC off. I'm going to make my change and then turn it back on. When I turn it back on, it applies the change, almost like clicking OK in Windows. So I'm going to turn that off. I'll click the little wrench icon. This will allow me to go make my setting change, and when I turn the NIC back on, it'll apply it. So I'll click IP4. I'm going to click here to manual. My option opens up here, and I will plug in 192.168.10. Okay, I can't use my computer number again. If I use .2, it's going to conflict with my Windows PC. So what we do now is I'm just going to use the format of my computer number as 100. So I will say I'm sitting on computer 2, I will make it 102. If I were sitting on computer 12, I would make it 112. And just make my computer number into a 100 number. Again, that'll make sure nobody in the room is nobody in the room is duplicating, and I'm not duplicating my Windows machine. I'm going to click on the net mask, and I do need to fill it in here. And 255, 255, 2550. Make sure I don't have extra characters or spaces. If I do, you'll notice the apply button grays out. It's saying, hey, something's not right. Don't do that. So go back and double check for typos or wrong characters. Even a space over here will do it. It doesn't understand that. So if I see that grayed out, I have to go back and double check for typos. I'm going to plug that in. I'm going to leave the gateway alone. I'm not actually trying to get to the internet while I'm doing this. So I'm going to say apply. And I would turn my NIC back on, and I should see that number pop right in there, which is kind of cool. Windows does not do that. Linux and Apple does this so you can see it. Windows does not. That's one of the other reasons we go right to the command prompt too. All right, I'm going to close that out. I'm going to open my terminal prompt back up over here, and I'm going to do ifconfig and verify my IP address. And there it is. Yes. Woo. I'm also going to do a ping to 127.0.0.1, my loopback, and verify that it is TCP/IP is installed, my NIC is working. In this case, it's a virtual NIC, but my virtual NIC is working and communicating. I'll need a Control-C to stop that ping. Right here's the Control-C will stop that ping. All right, now that I have static IP address set on Windows and my Linux virtual machine, I'm going to do a ping between them. I'm going to do a ping between them. So over here on my Windows, I'm going to pull my command prompt back up, and I'm going to ping my Linux virtual machine. I'm going to ping this IP address that I set on the Linux virtual machine. So over here, I will do a ping to 192.168.10.102. That's the Linux virtual machine. And I should be getting a successful. I should be getting a reply from my Linux virtual machine. If I do not, go back and double check your IP settings on Windows, retrace your steps, look for typos, and do the same thing on Linux. Retrace those steps, these couple steps we did right here, retrace your steps and look for typos. The other thing you do is make sure what you're typing here does not have a typo in as well. Those are some super quick troubleshooting things you can do to narrow down where something might have gone awry. But I should be looking for that successful ping right there. I'm going to do the same thing on my Linux. I will ping 192.168.10.2. I'm going to ping my Windows machine. And again, I should be seeing a reply from. Do a Control-C to stop it. If by chance I have a weird number in there, or there's a problem with my machine or my settings, I'll get these destination unreachables. Now, I pinged a number that nothing is set at right now, so I am going to get a destination unreachable. But if I see that that's letting me know, double check that I'm pinging the right number, make sure my settings are correct, go back and retrace my steps to find it and fix it, and then try my ping to, in this case, the correct address. And that's what I should be seeing. All right, once I get those successfuls, I'm going to save that to my text files. So I will do my Windows over here first. Let me minimize my virtual machine here real quick. On my Windows, I'm going to highlight this successful ping. I'll highlight all of it. I'll hit the Enter key. I'll open my notepad back up, and I'm going to do layer 3 static IP version 4 address. That way I know exactly what this is, and I will paste that in and save. And there is my successful ping and proof that my static IP address was set correctly. I will minimize that. I will go back to my virtual machine, and I'm going to copy this right here. Here's my successful ping on my Linux virtual machine. And I will do the edit copy here, and I will go back to my text file. There it is here. And I will do layer 3 static IP version 4 address. And I will paste that in, and that's proof that successful ping is proof that my static IP version 4 address is functioning. All right, so I have my static IP address and it's functioning. What we need to do is set it back to dynamic. So I'm going to repeat my process and select the option for obtain IP address automatically. So let me minimize my virtual machine just to clean up my screen. And I'm going to my Windows. On my Windows, I'm going to redo my steps and select IP address, obtain IP address automatically. I'm going to come down here and use the network icon. Right click on top of that, open network and internet settings, go to my network and sharing, go to Ethernet 3, go to properties, go to TCP IP version 4 properties, and I'm going to say obtain IP address automatically, obtain DNS automatically, and I will close with the OKs and the close. If I'm not careful, if I close with the X, I basically say, never mind, don't do that. So I want to be using the close or the OKs here. Okay, that should be applied, and I will go verify with my command prompt here, ipconfig, and I should be seeing a 172.21 from the college, seeing the hack.edu domain. So I know I'm back to dynamic. Excellent. And now I'll be able to, work on my next part of my lab. I'm going to do that on my Linux virtual machine now as well. I'll minimize my text file here. I'll minimize my command prompt. I'm going to go down here to the network icon, click network settings. I will shut the NIC off. I will go to my settings here, IPv4. Now, I do want to, sometimes I can get lucky, but I usually, to be thorough, I'm going to delete the settings out of here and then click automatic. And that's kind of like the most thorough way to do it, that I minimize my chance of errors. And then I'll turn my NIC back on. And I see it's pulling up a 172.21 from the college. And if I do my command prompt here again, ifconfig, oops, get back there, I'm picking up a 172.21 from the college. So now I'm back to dynamic, and I'm basically set up to do the next part of my lab. Now, I don't actually need to gather proof of that because I needed to set it back to be able to do other stuff in the lab. This is basically just returning our settings. But that is how I set or double check my dynamic IP address settings on my machines. All right, so there is my IP4 addressing part of our lab. In the next podcast, I will come back with the IP version 6 part of the lab.